Alright students, here we go is the diagram for this vehicle, 1999 Ram. Alright, very simple diagram. This diagram works great for us to learn off of, so this is actually a great vehicle. Most of these components you have understood, you've studied before, we're now just putting them all together. The one thing that we won't get to is a powertrain control module. It has some electronic functions added to this. You'll see that on some vehicles that have like a remote start, push button start, security systems. This acts as a security system. Alright, so we have a battery. That battery has the B negative attached to ground. B positive sends a heavy cable down to the starter. Alright, there's also a heavy cable going to the power distribution center for all the fuses and relays. We have one fuse of a 50 amp fuse to protect this circuit, which goes through the switch in the relay to the solenoid. That's what's going to provide the magnetic field to close the contacts, as well as move the pinion and engage it with the flywheel. When these contacts close, now power from the battery can go through the contacts to the motor and to ground. Okay. If we look at the control side, got another fuse there, got the ignition switch. When the driver turns the ignition switch to the start position, power goes through the coil to ground through a switch. The vehicle has to be in park or neutral in order to start. Alright, that's pretty straightforward. So, when we turn the key, magnetic field closes the contacts, power is sent to the solenoid, creates a magnetic field, closes those contacts, moves the pinion out to engage the flywheel. Power now is allowed to go through here to the motor. The vehicle cranks. So that all happened very fast while we were listening to it. I could hear that click. I could hear the clunk. If you weren't real observant, you heard the starter motor cranking, and then the vehicle started. So start to listen for these a little bit. Now here's what we're going to do. We're going to go out and just install a couple of these bugs so that we can listen to what these sound like. So the first thing we're going to do is create an open in this circuit so that no power gets to the solenoid. If no power gets to the solenoid, it will not click or clunk. Alright, now the relay is still going to click because this circuit's okay. I'm going to remove this fuse. That's the easiest way to do this, and it'll work just fine. I'll remove this fuse, therefore no power can get to the motor. Alright, let's go do that, and then we will do a couple of other bugs as well. Let's head out. Alright, get everything set here. Hold on, having a hard time. My phone battery does not hold on, so it goes dead. Alright, let me get it back on my homemade tripod here. Our production is pretty sketchy on this video, but I sure hope this will mean something to you. Alright, so that fuse that I talked about taking out is this one here. It's one of these large cartridge fuses, 50 amp. These are a little bit different to test. Right? A regular fuse, we can just put power. We can, with our test light or meter, just check for power on both sides. That would indicate a good fuse. This has a cover on it, so we can't do that. We either have to take the cover off, which you usually break it. You can look at it visually. You can also take your meter, and I will put my meter on continuity check with the buzzer on there, and watch this. I'm just going to check. So I've got it on no meters, and the continuity speaker is on. See if I can hold this. Yeah, that fuse is good. So I'm just going to leave it out, and that will act like if it's got a bad fuse. Okay, so listen to what you hear now. It's not going to be very loud, so listen for the click of the relay. is on. Here we go. Okay, so I'm cycling the switch to start, off, start, off. Okay, so what we actually heard there was more than one relay. There is an automatic shutdown relay that clicks, and also this one. So I find that it works best if you put your hand on it, or maybe a short little stick that you hold to your ear. Make sure this is the one that's clicking. This is our starter relay. All right, let's put that fuse back in right there. So now the relay should work. We should have power going to it. Okay, so let's look at the diagram here. So yeah, that's what we did. We removed this fuse. Did not have power going through here, so even though this clicked and made contact, no power got to the solenoid. All right, so I would, if I didn't hear that solenoid clunk, I would know to go back and check this circuit. See how that made that simplify? I don't have to go check everything else. The relay clicked, so I know that all of this is probably okay. I don't need to check this yet because the solenoid didn't even click. Evidently it's not getting power here. I need to test this circuit here. Okay, very good. Let's look at another scenario. We're going to disconnect the power from the battery here, so there's no power going to the starter. So now we're going to get power going through here. The solenoid will clunk. The contact will make contact. The gear will go out and engage the flywheel, but there's no power there. So it will not engage. All right, so I have done that by disconnecting the heavy battery cable going down to the starter. I still have power going to my power distribution center. Okay, here we go. Okay, key is on. I'm going to go to crank right now. Crank, off. Crank, off. Crank. Okay. Now, if I experience that in a vehicle I was diagnosing, I know, or I think, that most of the circuit's okay. My solenoid is clunking. There must be an issue here. So it could be the cable, it could be the switch, it could be a bad starter motor itself. All right? So, there we go. Now, let's see if we can disable this side here. Okay? So what I'm going to do, let me check and see. I don't know exactly which fuse I'm at. Give me just a second. Okay, so I think that's the fuse. I'm not real positive. Let's try it and see what happens. Okay, key is on. No, wrong fuse. All right, so the other fuse I think it might be is this one here. Okay, here we go. Switch is on. Start. Off. Start. Off. Start. Off. Okay, so once again, this is a little confusing. I am getting another relay clicking. Okay, so I would need to actually be testing this one while somebody else is turning it. But this relay did not click. We did not get any clunking. All right, that tells me something different, doesn't it? It tells me this circuit is not working. All right, something in this circuit. There's no need of me checking this other circuit now because the relay doesn't even click. If the relay is not clicking, something's wrong here. So I need to do checks on all this circuit to make sure it's good. Okay, so we're going to do all that testing when we get back to school, where I can guide you through it. You can actually see it. You can do it. So we'll do that. All right. So the last thing that we want to look at is actually the sound of the motor, which I can't do much for this. I'm not going to bug my starter and make it not work anymore. So if that starter is making any growling sound, turning the engine over very slowly, that either means it's not getting good voltage, battery's low, that's possible. If it's making a real growly, what we call a growly, if you've ever heard an electric motor make that noise, it usually smells burnt at the same time. Bad motor.